Hello everyone, Mean Machine Dean here, back for another episode of Mean Machine Talks, and I have a very special guest, but just before I talk about the gentleman to the left of the screen, which is that way, I always get that round the wrong way, there are a couple of things in chat if you do wish to use them. At the bottom of the screen there are two commands that you can use to learn a little bit about said guest. So if you use !podguest, you will learn a little bit about him and some of the cool things that he's been up to, as well as all of his social links that you need, because you need to follow all of them, because they're all amazing. And if you do wish to ask Bill at any point during this this podcast a question, !pod question, and what it will do is it will give you a form, fill out the form, and the questions will come straight through to me besides me. Right, with that done, I can now talk about my guest. Bill is someone who I have been watching for a while on Twitch. I am slightly fanboying out right now. He is what I would call Mr. Amiga. I mean, in case the hat didn't give it away. He is Mr. Amiga. He is also an Emmy award-winning videographer. Again, another reason why I'm slightly fanboying out. All will be explained shortly. So, without further ado, welcome, Bill. How are you? And welcome to Mean Machine Talks.
Thanks, Dean. It's a pleasure to be here, man. I really appreciate it. And yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to chatting with you.
Good. Yeah, likewise. I mean, I've been, I guess, following your progress for a little bit while from a distance. I kind of stumbled on your channel by accident, if I'm honest. When I kind of started getting into Twitch streaming, I've got a heavy passion for retro myself, and I was kind of like, oh, who's out there, who's doing what, and who's streaming what. And I remember it's kind of going through the categories, and I found the retro section and clicked that, and I was like, Amiga Bill, I wonder what he streams. And then my jaw hit the floor when I suddenly saw your plethora of Amigas that you've got and how you stream. And it is an absolute marvel to witness. I mean, I would probably say, and I, again, disagree if you wish, I would probably say in the last year your Twitch streams have massively improved in terms of the production quality and the content you put out, and your community is growing at a scarily but brilliant rate. Which I think, again, is really testament to the great quality of what you actually put out there. So yeah, keep up the great work, essentially.
Thanks. It's so funny because when I first started streaming on Twitch, I wasn't like, oh, I'm going to start streaming on Twitch. I was running a YouTube channel. I still am, with my buddy Anthony, called The Guru Meditation. And I kind of wanted to practice doing live streaming. So I started a Twitch account because I was like, I can just practice over here and no one's going to show up and no one will see it. So I can just be bad and it'll be fine. But then I started streaming on it, and then people started showing up and I was like, oh, this is cool. And then I really enjoyed, I started meeting other Twitch streamers and I was like, oh, wow, this is like a really, really cool community. And then I started really getting into it, and I love streaming on Twitch, and I love the Twitch community here of other streamers. And then I'm really lucky and thankful for all the people that come into my streams, like you mentioned, who some of them are Twitch streamers and some of them aren't. They're just Amiga fans, and some are just retro fans. So it's been awesome, and now it's evolved into something bigger. And then as people started to show up, I was like, oh, maybe there's something to this. At the beginning, like I wasn't really trying like that hard. Then I was like, now that people are really enjoying this, maybe I'll step up my production value in my game to like what I'm capable of, like I said at the beginning, it was just for fun, just for practice, and it's been really great because it's been I've learned a lot. It's made me better as a person because I've been able to look at myself on camera. I've been able to interact with people. Twitch streaming forces you to talk a lot, so I've been able to communicate with people better. So like now when I apply it to my real job, like if I have to give a pitch to a director or a pitch to an ad agency, I can kind of channel things that I've learned by streaming and by doing YouTube videos into that. So it gives me a lot more confidence, and it's been really helpful.
No, I mean, as I said, it's been brilliant for me because I guess one of the benefits I have is kind of being able to sit on the fence and watch others. Whereas being a streamer myself, it's very difficult to see on the other side what the interaction's like. Sometimes, I mean, keeping up with chat alone is a challenge at the best of times. And I think it's one of those things because you've really honed in on one specific area. And as an Amiga lover myself, my 600 is sat there. Crash Bandicoot is currently guarding it. Not that it's under attack before anyone gets panicked. But because you've really focused in on that, I think I mean, the Amiga for me will always have a soft spot for me. A strong part of my gaming childhood was very much focused on the Amiga, and I think because you've honed in on that, and obviously because of the brilliant community, which we'll touch on shortly, that you've kind of, I guess, steered to some degree from physical meetups to, obviously, as you said, digital, and obviously that has exponentially then grew out into this this wonderful community that you've built of incredible talent and, you know, really cool people. And, you know, I'm a member of your Discord, and I may not be as involved, but I kind of watch everything and see that wonderful sense of, I think the word we're looking for is community. There's a real community spirit, and I think you've really bonded that together with the correct mix. I mean, I guess arguably probably one of my issues is that I go so down a gaming focus that if you're not really into gaming, then you're not going to be interested, whereas you kind of combined a lot of the technical aspects as well as the gaming and a variety of different stuff. And, you know, the work you put out is obviously, you know, in my eyes, absolutely first class. And again, that's testament to the community that you've managed to build as well. So going into that community, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, that is it the largest Amiga community going till date?
I don't know if my Twitch community is the largest.
I'm not
sure.
Sorry, I meant the Amiga group that you've got in North.
Oh,
North,
yeah.
New York.
So
yeah.
I don't. So yeah. So anyway, so I run a user group, an Amiga user group in New York. It's called the Westchester Amiga User Group, and I started it back in 1988.
Wow.
And we've been meeting on the first Thursday of every month ever since, and we never stopped.
That's so cool.
I don't think we're the largest because we're not very large. We have about 35 active members.
Right.
Which is great for 2020, and it's a really nice size. So, but I don't think we're the largest, but I would bet we're probably the longest continually running group. I don't think I don't think anyone's been going since 1988.
No,
so
agreed.
It's possible. It's very, very possible that there's another one. I know of other Amiga user groups that are out there, and they're awesome. Like, you know, there's like Swag in the UK,
yeah,
and there's even like a Muse, which is one here in New York City, but they don't really meet anymore. They just kind of been a little bit inspired by my group, Westchester Amiga User Group, so they're thinking about starting to have some meetings again, which is cool. That's the whole point. That's the whole point why I do this stuff, is to inspire other people to either start streaming or start a user group, or just trying to keep the retro stuff alive. So I don't think that WOG is the biggest, but I think it's definitely the longest continually running. If not, there's not many that have been running longer, because I got my Amiga in '87. I joined the club in 1987. It wasn't originally WOG. It was part of that Amuse, the New York City group. And then in 1988, the guys who were running it from New York City decided they didn't want to come run the satellite club anymore. So I took over the club, and I applied to Commodore, and we became an official Commodore user group, and I got the stamp, and we got bylaws and all that fun stuff.
That's
Obviously,
awesome.
The stamp and the bylaws are irrelevant now because Commodore is defunct. But the group meets on, and it's an amazing group of people, and we have a lot of fun, and it's so cool to be able to like meet in person, you know, like meeting online. I love both. I love online and I love meeting in person, and they kind of go hand in hand, because online can help you reach a broader audience, and you can meet people from literally other parts of the world. But meeting in person is just so cool. It's just awesome to like hang out with friends and, you know, have some beers, eat some pretzels, and then play play games together. And you can actually stand in front of a real machine and talk about it, or open it up and trick it out. It's really awesome, and I love the user group. It's been an awesome, I don't even know how many years. I can't even do the math. 1988. It's a long time.
it's a long time. Could there be a Guinness World Record sitting on that? Let's we should dive in. You should dive into that, Bill. You could be sitting on a world record there, and you don't even know about
it.
But speaking of that community, I mean, I've just had a quick look in chat, and I can see there's someone who's joined from Germany, which makes it probably my now first international podcast in terms of my audience. So welcome from Germany, and everyone else who's currently in chat.
Snow Dog is in the USA, so you got USA as well.
Oh, we're covering a broad spectrum here. This is fantastic.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm not sure where Amiga 1200 Gamer's from, but I think he might be UK. So
okay.
That's your nation. I'm not sure about that though. I could be wrong. Apologize if I'm wrong.
We're all one community. It's fine. But just to recap, for everyone who's currently in chat, if you do want to ask Bill a question, !guest at the bottom will give you bit information about Bill if you don't already know who Bill is. And !pod question will send you to a link, and if you fill that in, I will get the question come through straight to me. But coming back to your community and stuff, I mean, I totally understand the difference between online and in person. I mean, I experienced this myself for the first time at the back end of last year. Yeah, so there's a big expo that takes place in the UK called Play Expo, and essentially
Mhm.
it's throw as many consoles and arcade machines into a room as possible, and everybody goes in and has a great time. It's wonderful, and I met so many people who, I bonded friendships with online and stuff like that, and I had the most surreal moment where people were tapping me on the shoulder and they were like, "Hey, you're Me Machine Dean, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Can I get a photo?" I'm like, "Yeah." Like, okay, this is a bit weird. But I shared a lovely moment with some people where I was literally like on an arcade machine and playing with them and stuff. And it's like you start to go back into your mind. You're like, I met this person online, and now that I'm standing next to someone who's not pixelated or in a pixelated username, and I'm actually playing a game with them. And that sense of community, as you said, I think there's always going to be an online presence, whether it be people international as we're seeing here, and I think there's something very strong about having a physical meetup. Obviously made more difficult with current ongoing global issues, but there's something very strong about having a love for a specific product or company or cars for that matter, whatever your subject matter is. There is something very strong about a bond between us all when we have a specific subject type. And I think, again, going back to yourself, I think because you've really just focused in on that one subject, I mean, for me, as I said before, I'm a lover of the Amiga, and it's something I've always dabbled with, but to have that kind of I guess pillar of possibly the community that people can kind of go to as that main source. I mean, you've helped me out in the past. I dropped you a DM and I was so nervous. I was like, he's probably going to tell me to go away, and you were like, yeah, here you go, dude, here's this and this, and I was like, huh, what? He's awesome. I love this guy. So what I normally do is I normally jump all the way back to little Bill, when Bill was little and a small boy. And I normally ask the question, which is normally an amusing one, which is, what was the first gaming memory that you ever had?
That's an easy one because my dad bought me this thing called the Coleco Telstar Arcade, which
Yes.
I wish I had here, but it's actually at his house. It's this old system from Coleco, the same folks that made
Yep.
like ColecoVision and the Cabbage Patch Kids, and it's a triangular shaped gaming console, and it's even got like the faux wood paneling on it because it matches like the faux wood paneling on the walls of like
Lovely.
American houses in the 60s and 70s, and it's got 3 games. It's got on one side it's got a steering wheel to it's a driving game, and the other side's got a light gun, so there's a little guy that ran across the screen and you shoot him with the light gun, and then it's got the third part of the triangle. It's got 2 paddles to play Pong on. So that was the first time. I'll never forget when my dad brought that home and hooked it up to the TV downstairs. That was the first time I ever played a video game, something like on the TV. So it was. I still have it. I still got my Telstar Arcade. I also had an Atari as well at the same time. It was an Atari Pong game as well. It had like Breakout and Pong. It was really cool. That one was it just had the knobs for Pong.
Yeah.
It didn't have the steering wheel and the light gun, but it was cool too. So those are like the earliest memories. And then from there, I went on to ColecoVision and Intellivision, and then I got my first computer in 1980, the Atari 800.
Nice.
And then it was just on from there. Commodore 64, Apple IIe, and Amiga.
Do you know, it's funny you mentioned about the Atari 800, because I was actually talking to my parents, my brother and my father about this. And one game that cropped up was Rescue on Fraculus. And I only realised recently that I don't know how this slipped my mind, that it was made by LucasArts. It was only because I looked at the box the other day and I went, hang on a minute, I'm sure that said LucasArts. My dad was like, yeah, did you not know? I was like, all these years, and I had no idea about that. I also learnt recently that someone had actually done a modernised remake of that game that runs on the PC, and I was like, well, it's amazing what you discover when you do a little bit of research, isn't it? But yeah, those are very strong selections of gaming history. I like that, because most people I've asked have gone for your standard, well, I was a Nintendo kid, or I was a Sega kid, or I was this, that, and the other. But I like the fact that you've gone with the Intellivision. That does warm my heart a little bit, because it's one of those consoles. Again, I played at that event that I was telling you about. I sat down and I was playing with all of these consoles that I never had. And after playing those, you start to have a lot more appreciation for them, to actually see exactly what they were trying to do. So like you said, having all of these different control and interaction methods in one thing, I mean, that's a pretty tall order to try and get all that tech into one thing and then bundle that into a computer. So, but yeah, I mean, it's amazing how these gaming memories come back through technology. It's something I've always held on to when I pick up a console and I'm like, oh, I remember that, I remember this, I remember that. There's always that one gaming thing that comes off into your mind. So you touched on the subject of Amiga. So what was the first Amiga that you got?
Oh, so I got an Amiga 500 for Christmas 1987. I'll never forget.
Nice.
My dad took me to the local store. It's called Software Link, and it was just a Commodore store. So it was only Commodore stuff. It was
Oh, wow.
just Commodore 64, Commodore Amiga. Yeah, and it was like the first time I experienced community, because like everyone would just kind of like come to the store and hang out. Like if you had a Commodore, you could just like hang out at the store, and then a customer would come in, you like hang out and talk to them. All the salespeople that worked there were really nice and very like friendly, and you could just like hang out and talk to them. So the user group, the Amuse group that eventually became Westchester Amiga User Group, used to meet there. So it was like a meeting point for everyone in the Commodore community. So my dad took me to that store, and we saw the Amiga 500 in the window, because I always wanted an Amiga. Every time I saw the back of the game boxes, they'd have screenshots, and the Amiga version like always looked so good. But the Amiga 1000, which came out in 1985, was pretty expensive, man. It was out of our price range. But then when Commodore came out with the 500, they were able to like cost reduce it and even made it a little bit better with more memory, because you could expand it to more memory. And they so like we saw the 500, and my dad's like, oh, this is a really cool computer. I think you'd like this one. I'm like, yeah, I would love to have this one. So they gave us a VHS videotape of it's called like I Am the Commodore Amiga 500, and
Wow.
I played it. This is like in October, and I played that videotape like every single day after school, like 10 times, like leading up to Christmas, just like dreaming of the Amiga. It was a really good demo. It showed like Defender, the Crown, and these classic games, and then it showed all the creative apps, all the like Deluxe Paint, and it showed how you can make music, like Deluxe Music Construction Kit. And I was like, oh, because I loved it. I loved the games, but eventually I ended up doing more creative stuff with the Amiga versus the games. But so yeah, I love the fact that it was like a creative tool, and I'm a visual person, so I was just like blown away by the visuals, and I wanted it so bad. And the tape was funny. It had like this funny voiceover. It's like, I am the Commodore Amiga 500, and then it had always like Amiga 500s on like these pedestals that like rose up from the ground, and it was just like this huge thing of smoke, and the smoke was like backlit in like blue and purple, and it was just awesome.
I feel like I may have seen that kicking around on YouTube, actually. I think it was like I think I remember seeing something.
It's on there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you still have that VHS?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I've got the VHS, and then my buddy, sorry, don't mean to plug it, but my buddy,
No, sure,
Thierry,
go
he's got
ahead.
a whole website called amigavideo.net,
Oh.
and he's a video file, so he's like super interested in like preserving the videos, little videos like in their highest quality. So he'll find like if it's on Beta SP, he'll get the Beta SP version.
Wow.
If it's on SVHS, he'll do SVHS. If it's only VHS, then at least he'll make the transfer with an S video cable. And he wants to get it. YouTube is awesome, but he wants to have like one spot for all the Amiga videos in the highest quality. So he's got it on there. He's got all the Amiga promo videos on amigavideo.net, and it's cool. I'll pop onto his site and watch it every now and then and take my nostalgia trip.
That's brilliant. I didn't even know that existed. Well, there you go. I've just learned something that means tomorrow I'm going to waste a lot of time. Damn it, Bill. Damn it. You see, I'm going to have to explain to my boss that I couldn't complete a task because I've spent like an hour on this website. But never mind. It's a good website to see.
Yeah, YouTube's great, but some of the captures are pretty poor, especially on the vintage stuff. Because maybe the source material that they had wasn't so good to begin with, or they don't know how to capture it properly. But Thierry, like really, he gets the best quality that he can. So the YouTube's got the algorithm. It's easy to find stuff. It's great, but on his site, it's all there, and everything's like at the best quality. So
that's really cool.
Yeah.
Damn it, Bill. Now I'm going to lose loads of time. Okay, so that's no. Don't apologise. It's Amiga related. It's perfectly fine. So yeah, I mean, I have. I wouldn't say vague memories. I don't remember us getting the Amiga, but I do remember my father kind of introducing me to the system as a whole. Because I mean, I was mainly a console gamer back then, and I was kind of playing on the NES and stuff like that, and then the SNES kind of like half sat in the corner of the room, and it was like, I think my dad had realised like it's about time you started playing real games, you know what I mean? And he was like, he sort of sat me down and went like, here's how you load a game. You put the disc in, you do this, and I was like, okay. And it's funny because now, like, I used to be able to do so much on an Amiga, and like now I look at it and I'm like, I can't remember much at all. Like, I guess it's one of those things where as you use it all the time, as you probably have, it sticks ingrained in your head. But we made the jump from Amiga to PC, I think, just at the point where I think the 2000 came out. And we were literally sitting there going like, do we go for one, do we go for the other? And unfortunately it was the PC route that we went, or fortunately, depending on how you want to look at it. But yeah, I mean, I have such fond memories as a kid of the Amiga. I remember going to an Amiga show in the UK. Hulk Hogan was there, of all people.
Oh, no way.
I don't get why he was there, but anyway, he was there. And I remember we got Lotus Esprit Turbo Challenge, Magic Pockets, and I think my dad may have picked up Wings from there. So it was like the Uber event that we went to, and I think we ended up getting the trapdoor RAM upgrade as well. So it was like this powerful chip that was this big, and you kind of put it in, and it was like, okay, that's done. It was like a whole anti-climax, but it was like, no, it's much more faster. It's much more than that. It's not a visual thing. It's in there. It's doing a big thing. That's all that matters. But yeah, I mean, as you said, you've touched on being a creative person, which I guess is a perfect segue into other Bill. So, at what point did you start to make the change of, kind of going into your chosen industry, which is obviously you're an incredibly talented videographer? And does the Amiga have an influence on driving you down that route?
Thanks. Yeah, it sure does. Because, when I grew up, I was really into computers, and I thought I was going to become like a computer, like go into IT, become a computer consultant. I even had like my own computer company in high school. I used to like install Lantastic networks and install Windows and all kinds of stuff. But it wasn't like where my passion was. Like I loved the Amiga and I loved using it, but I wasn't like that into like the super technical part of computers. I mean, I kind of was, but not so much like fixing other people's computers. That was just getting old pretty quick. And I was actually at my friend's house, one of the members of Westchester Amiga user group, and my computer consulting business was pretty successful. And I actually bought myself a really nice new car. It was like a 1992 Plymouth Laser. It's like a Mitsubishi Eclipse.
Yes, I know them. Yeah, very nice.
It was awesome. I was doing, my business was rocking, and I bought myself the car. And I took it. I was like, oh, this car's cool, and I wanted to take a picture of it because I was really proud of it. So I took a picture of the car, and my friend who was in the user group was an amateur photographer, and he was a professional editor for ABC Network in New York City.
Nice.
And he saw the picture, and he was just like, oh man, he's like, that's a really good picture. He said, you should think about doing some photography. And meanwhile, like my whole life, I had video cameras in the house because my dad teaches TV and radio production. So I was just, I shot so many videos growing up as a kid. And of course I would, use the Amiga to make all the titles and whatnot for my videos. And I was in the video club in high school as well, and did all the titles and stuff with the Genlock, with a Rock Gen and an Amiga 2000. So I didn't ever realize like I was good at like the photo part of it until I kind of started taking photography. And then I I took a photography class based on my friend's recommendation in college. I was going to Westchester Community College. It's a 2-year school that you go to, before you go to a 4-year school. Because that's the school my dad teaches at. So I was taking I took the photography class, and I did really well in the photography class. And the teacher is just like, yeah, he's like, you could be a professional if you want to be. And I was like, yeah, I think I do, because fixing computers is just it's not fulfilling me. Like I'm doing really well financially, but I dreaded it. And then I was working sometimes I was working I had my own business, and I also worked for a company, and I was like sitting in the cubicle, and I just knew it just wasn't for me. I need to like get out in the world and travel and experience the world. So then I was like, yeah. And so I knew I loved the video, I loved the photography, and I love movies. I was a huge fan of movies. I have a big Laserdisc collection. I would watch all the movies, and I would look at the credits. I'm like, you know what? Like all these people all have jobs, right? They got paid to make this movie. I mean, maybe I could do that too. So I decided to go to apply to film school. So I applied to, there's a really good film school in New York City. It's called Nyu Film School. And, like Spike Lee went there, and Martin Scorsese. And
nice.
Yeah, it's a very prestigious school. There's that, like USC and UCLA in California. Those are 3 big ones. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to give it a shot. I'll apply to NYU and see how it goes. And I got in. I submitted a portfolio of photography and video stuff. Yeah, and I got in, so I'm like psyched. So I went to NYU Film School, and then that's how I started my career as a cinematographer.
That is a hell of a story. Is that a video toaster in the background, by the way?
It is. So what's playing on the screen is a DVD.
Oh, okay.
I'm just putting a DVD into the monitor, so the toaster's off. But yeah, it's an Amiga 2000 with a Toaster 4000 inside of it.
I thought as much.
The toaster is something I always dreamed of having, but I could never have it because it was really expensive.
Just
so
grasp.
I actually didn't get this toaster until this year. I got it in March, right before COVID hit. Yeah.
Wow. Good timing there. Good timing. I like that.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's a fantastic story. I mean, I share similarities with yourself. I mean, I'm a very creative person. I studied, similar to you actually. I did a bit of photography, did videography, animation, and then I kind of fell into interface design, and then my day job, which is basically I'm a professional email spammer. I'm not a spammer, I'm a marketer. Okay, I'm a marketer, I'm not a spammer. Before anyone starts raging in chat, I'm a marketer. Yeah, it's funny because there are times where having a day job you feel incredibly restrictive, I think, getting into a routine, which isn't necessarily a bad thing for some people, but I think for people who are in a creative mindset, or as you said, a kind of visually stimulated mindset, it's very difficult to be in that routine and have to follow what you're being told versus what your instincts are telling you. Which is why when I did a brief stint of doing a lot of photography, I felt very open, very free to kind of express myself through that. And then, you know, I kind of dabble with YouTube every so often. And it's funny because that stuff, as well as streaming and obviously interviewing great people such as yourself, gives me a lot of great pleasure because I feel like it's being me. So I can kind of relate to you there. But I guess it kind of helped having a father who kind of taught that subject as well. I guess that kind of helped influence your drive. But I mean, again, it's a fantastic story that you kind of were spotted at a young enough age, and I guess you were nurtured through that, which is fantastic. So, as with all good things, once you kind of achieve a certain level, where did you get your kind of first real hit to kind of get you on that path? Because obviously, once you graduate, it's kind of hard to make that initial first step into the real world. So what did that path look like?
That's a really good question. There's two things that happened. They're two kind of like crazy stories. There's the more minor one that happened is that I just graduated from film school, and my uncle is in the construction business, and he was working on someone's house, and then the person whose house he was working on had a neighbor, and the neighbor was like outside watching him, you know, put in like this patio, and for like 2 weeks. And my uncle's like, he's just curious. He's just like, how's this guy? Who's this guy that can like sit at home and like watch me work all day? And then the guy was curious as to like how my uncle was like building the patio. So they ended up, you know, talking. And my uncle's like, I hope you don't mind me asking. He's just like, but what do you do for a living? And the guy was like, oh, I'm a director of photography. I shoot TV commercials. My uncle's like, no way. My nephew just graduated from NYU, and you know he's looking for work. And he's like, I went to NYU. And I'm like, he's like, cool. So then he introduced me, and I started becoming his assistant. And I'm still friends with him to this day. Yeah, and I was his assistant for several years. He's a great guy, and he taught me a lot. So that was just kind of like dumb luck. But then the thing that really got me started is one of my friends in film school. It's funny, like when you go to film school, especially in the 90s, like I did, like everyone wanted to be a director. That's what everyone wanted to do. Everyone wanted to be a director. But I didn't. I just wanted to be a cinematographer. Because all I cared about, I cared about filmmaking as a whole, of course, but my primary vision was like I knew I was good at making people look their best, and I knew I was good at composing images and doing lighting with the camera. The cinematography was what I was good at. So I was like, I'm just going to focus on that. And I was super busy in film school because everyone wanted to be a director, so they always called me to shoot their films. And but then my friend Justin, he also didn't want to be a director, but he was laser focused on producing. So when we got out of school, he got a producing job with a really incredible production company. They're like one of the best literally one of the best in the world, and they're headquartered in New York. And so he got a job with them, and then he was so it's like a year after school, so he got a job with them, and then he had to hire a cinematographer, and he's like, he didn't know that many, so he's like, oh, Bill from film school, man, he was good. I'll give him a call. So and I got to work with the director on that was like a director / cinematographer, and he's amazing. His name is Robert Leacock, and his father was Ricky Leacock, and he's a legend in documentary filmmaking. So I got to shoot along with Robert Leacock, and it was amazing, and I learned a lot from him. It was this really cool documentary about Savion Glover, the tap dancer. And then so I proved myself to them, and I proved myself to this production company, and then they were producing then they had another job come up, and it was a show called The Life. It was on ESPN, and it was like one of the first, like, I'll say reality, but it's more of like a day in the life documentary series about professional athletes off the field or off the court. And then they also did like these cool stories, like we had like Shaquille O'Neal and like some really big names, but then we had like really quirky stuff like following a horse through the Kentucky Derby, and or like going to like a famous golf course and like hanging out with the guy who drives the cart that picks up the golf balls. So it was like superstars, but then also like really cool quirky stories. And then and I shot that show, and that show became really popular on ESPN, and it was like one of the first documentary shows of its kind. So because I shot that, that gave me a name, and that's what really launched my career as a cinematographer. Because people were calling ESPN asking like, "Oh, that show's awesome. Who shoots that show?" And then ESPN gave them my name, and then I would shoot their show for them. And that's what really got me started.
I mean, that is a story. I love that.
Yeah.
Absolutely love that. Very good. I guess that's one of those things where I think you probably touched on it briefly, where it's one of those things where in life, sometimes when you have an opportunity, sometimes you've just got to pull the trigger and go for it, right? And I think especially in that sector where, as you said, you know, you may have had a, probably similar to the Amiga actually in your kind of group at the moment, you've got a very niche that you really honed in on, and because you became an expert in that field, you were the go-to guy. And I guess the other thing off the back of that is obviously relationships, which is again, whether that's, you know, your day job or obviously with the community that you have, having that very tight-knit community and relationships where, you know, you could be the go-to person, or you may know someone else who knows someone else who can do that particular thing. But no, that is a really fantastic story. That's thanks for sharing that with us, Bill. I think that's really great to hear, because I guess for some people they may not obviously know that this other side of Bill. He's not Batman, unfortunately. I thought he was, but he's not Batman. But I mean, one thing I did want to ask actually, and it's slightly off the cuff, was I saw you did some stuff where you were filming with Mike Tyson. Is that correct?
Yep.
Was that one of the most terrifying things in your life?
No, it was actually the opposite. No, I'm not gonna lie. At the beginning, when I got called for the job with Mike, I was a little bit scared, because I had only known him through like what I saw and what I read in the media.
Sure.
And I was like, oh man, like Mike Tyson, he's crazy. I don't know if I want to be like alone in a room with him. But I was like, you know what? I was like, I'm gonna go for it. The person who was producing the show is a really good friend of mine, and he's got a real level head. He's a real smart guy. And he's like, no, it's gonna be fine. He's like, I met with Mike, and he's actually a really good guy. So I'm like, all right, that's cool. I give everyone a chance, you know.
No, exactly.
So I went on.
Exactly,
Yeah.
I totally agree. It's one of those things where I think, as you said, it can be a, you know, you use your own judgment before you judge others, right? I mean, the media have a beautiful way of spinning things up. But yeah, that must have been a really intense moment when you walked into that room and he was just there.
Oh yeah, it was totally intense, because I mean, I grew up watching his fights. His fights were, I mean, they were events. They were like major events, and I'll never forget, you know, like going on vacation when I was a kid, and like reading the newspaper the next day, like, oh, Mike Tyson beat Michael Spinks in like 73 seconds and all that stuff. He was, of course, I played Mike Tyson's Punch Out, because I had an NES as well, so I was a huge Mike Tyson fan. And then, you know, like showing up at his house was pretty surreal. And then, so with the whole idea of the job, it was a show called Being Mike Tyson. And Mike actually made, it was a one-man Broadway show. It was literally just him by himself standing on a stage telling his life story to the audience. And Spike Lee directed the live Broadway, you know, theatrical show that went around the country. And then what I did was I shot the show Being Mike Tyson, which follows him around the country and shows like everything else that happens like off stage.
Sure.
So, you know, like everything from, and we did some like really amazing stuff. I mean, of course, like the highlight of that show is we went to go visit Muhammad Ali at his house.
Wow.
So I got to go to Muhammad Ali's house with Mike Tyson, and I was just like mind blown.
Wow.
that was amazing. And of course.
Yeah, it's right. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that was amazing. And then I also got to shoot Mike Tyson playing Mike Tyson's Punch Out for the very first time. He had never played it before. So
was it you who shot that?
Yeah.
That's awesome, because I remember seeing that. So rolling back the years slightly, so I've never managed to beat Mike Tyson's Punch Out until I think it was the back end of last year. I finally managed to do it. I took a picture of it and the internet went crazy. They were like, oh my god, you've only just done it now. I'm like, yes, okay, shit. Calm down, internet, okay, calm down. Yeah, exactly, I'm a few years too late, but it's fine. But I remember seeing that video, which then forced me to go back and replay it, and that's how I then do it. So that's weird how that's become full circle. Like, you shot that video, I saw it, then I played Mike Tyson's Punch Out, and then I beat Mike Tyson up in pixel forms. That's very odd. That's chills down my spine. That's very odd that's ever come full circle. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and then I'm glad I took the job, because Mike and I became pretty. Yeah, I'm not gonna say like close friends, because like I haven't talked to him in a while, but during the show we were really close, and we got along super well, and I really like him a lot, and it was an amazing experience.
That is absolutely awesome. I mean, I was looking through your website. I do a little bit of research on my guests. I try not to go at this completely blind. Yeah, I mean, I was looking at your kind of recent-ish shows, and I mean, I have watched a considerable amount of those and had no idea that you obviously had a piece in those. And that was the one that stood out the most. Was obviously you've obviously got an insight into a person who, as we've already said, on the outside obviously seems like a quite feared person in the public's eye. But obviously for you to have such an up-close relationship with him, which you obviously need to capture those intimate moments in such a documentary. I mean, that's really something. I mean, that's a book in itself.
That's amazing. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's cool because Mike is a very complicated character, and he's very smart, and things that the way he's portrayed, like some things, about him are certainly true. Like he admits it. Like, like people feared him, and he even says, he's like, I was a trained killer. Like I was trained to kill in order to be heavyweight champion of the world, like the best ever. Like I was in my mental state was to get in the ring and kill. And he's like, you know what? I couldn't take that outside the ring. I was just always, he's like, you can't just turn that off when you get out of the ring. Like you're in this mental state and it just stays with you 24 hours a day. It's not the kind of thing you can just turn off.
Sure.
And that mentality is what led him to do some really bad things, and to get into some trouble that he admits to, but he's like, but that part of my life is over now. And I'm trying to, set things straight and make things right. So, but he's like, but I understand, like when you hear him talk about it, like, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. I have no idea what it's like to be the heavyweight champion of the world, but I can imagine, like, he was just like, he's like, I was trained like a dog. I was trained to kill. And that was just my mindset 24 hours a day.
I mean, I guess it's one of these things with, I guess, I'm not sure if you can apply it. I mean, I guess you could kind of apply it to probably CEOs of business, but I think most athletes and probably top business people, I think, all have that kind of, obviously not necessarily the aggression side, but that absolute laser focus that no matter what's going to happen, that is mine and they're going to take it. And I think there's definitely probably a similarity in some sport cases where all of them kind of have that similar trait. I'm just trying to go through a few people in my mind actually, and I think I can definitely say a lot of them have probably got that same feature of being so laser focused that they would literally do anything to get it, which again, as you said, is been drilled so hard into Mike. To try and undo that wiring is probably going to be incredibly difficult to do. Although I did see a video of him training the other day and I was like,
I think he's making it. Yeah. I gotta call Mike. We gotta document this, Mike. We got another show here.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's funny you said that actually, because I was actually watching that video of him training and I was like, yeah, I can beat you at Punch Out. I'm not going to beat you in real life. All right, so that's
not. Ripped, yeah, he's he's looking lean and mean.
He is the type of guy I want in front of me when someone who's not keeping social distance crosses me in front of me. I'm like, Mike, go get him. Right, anyway, enough talk about Mike Tyson. So, I mean, obviously, we talked about how you kind of got into your career. Was there any crossover between the use of the Amiga and then your career? Was there anything that you were kind of using to kind of bring some of the Amiga into the work you did, or did you go off into use different technology in what you do?
By the time I got into filmmaking, Amiga was really like well past. The Amigas was pretty much expired already. So there was no. By the time when I got into filmmaking, like the newest thing was like Final Cut Pro at home, and I think like the Amiga and the video toaster were a big turning point in video history, because the toaster could bring live video switching that would cost like over $100,000 at ABC Studios onto your desktop. It could bring it into public access channels, and then I think the next big, I'll use in the words of Newtek, the next big video revolution, in my opinion, was DV cameras, mini DV cameras, and FireWire and Final Cut Pro, because Final Cut Pro brought high quality online video editing to the masses. Before that, you needed, like a huge, expensive Avid system or an expensive like Media 100 system. But with Final Cut Pro, you could like edit it on an iMac or a laptop, and that was just a massive, massive revolution. And that's what was happening when I got into the business, and that's why the show I told you about before, The Life, was so popular, because we shot on mini DV cameras, and the whole show was edited on Final Cut Pro, and like Apple was like totally behind that show as well. They worked closely with the production company, and like the people who were editing our show were editing with like Final Cut Pro before Final Cut Pro even came out. So it was like the first show that actually used Final Cut Pro. And by that time, like the Amiga was pretty much out of the picture because I mean, let's be honest, like those computers were much more powerful and could do a lot more than the Amiga could. So the Amiga like really hasn't been part of my professional career slash cinematography, from that standpoint. But you know what? I think it is going to become part of it because I want to do my own personal projects as well. And in order to be a good filmmaker, you need to have interesting subjects. So the Amiga is my favorite subject. So I want to use my filmmaking skills and make films about the Amiga. And we actually already did that a little bit. I worked with a good friend. He's become a good friend now. His name's Zach Weddington, and he made the film Viva Amiga, which is behind me. And so that's kind of like we made a film. I mean, it's Zach's film. I kind of came in at the end of Viva Amiga. It's Zach's film, but still, it's a film and it's about the Amiga. So that's that's my profession and my passion coming together. And now Zach and I are working on a new documentary called Arcade Dreams, which is about the history of arcades.
Nice.
So we're both Amiga guys. Like Zach is a huge Amiga fan as well, and I'm a huge Amiga fan. So it's like two Amiga fans, two Amiga fans who are also filmmakers, doing passion projects. So so from that standpoint, it definitely works with my career. And like I said, I want to make my own projects as well. And I got a few ideas of Amiga related content that I'd like to create myself. So you need a good subject, in order to tell an interesting story. As a filmmaker, you need good subjects. You need interesting subjects. Whether it's Jeffrey Epstein or the Amiga, you need an interesting subject people want to hear about.
Indeed. No, I totally agree. And I think it's one of those things, as you said, it's easier to make content about something you absolutely love rather than something you don't. Now, I'm not saying, obviously, the subjects that you've done previously are disregarded with that, but I guess, as you said, because it's a personal project, obviously you have such an invested love for the Commodore Amiga, as most of us do, and obviously you can focus on exactly the story that you want to tell. And I think that's definitely going to come out in the end. But I will definitely check out that video, actually, because it does look fascinating. I've been keeping half an eye on it as in the background, and I was like, I'm hoping he's going to mention it.
It's playing the loop. It's playing the loop. I got to play the real movie.
Oh, here we go.
That's just like the DVD, the DVD menu.
He's teasing us with the menu. You see what he's doing? You see what he's doing?
Yeah, and Viva Amiga was like it was really like Zach started making that back in 2014.
Oh wow.
And so he was really ahead of the curve. Like before like a lot of YouTube channels got big, and he was the first one to ever make a documentary about the Amiga. So it's an old film now, but Zach was ahead of the curve for sure, making Viva Amiga.
That's it's funny. One thing you mentioned that did make me smile was when I was at university. My knowledge of video editing wasn't that great. I still thought it was kind of like VHSs and loads of big like wheels and stuff like that, turning film and stuff like that. And it was only until I walked in and we saw these massive Mac desktop pros and stuff, and you hear all the fans kicking up and everything. And the first module was basically, go out and buy a DV cam. And I was like, huh? What? And they were like, yeah, go out and buy a DV cam. I'm like, all right. So I've actually got the Sony DV cam. It's actually sat in this cupboard just here. Because I refused to part with it, basically. And it's got like all of my university projects and stuff like that on it. And I remember the cool feeling of plugging a Firewire cable into the dock, plugging that into the Mac, opening Final Cut Pro, and scrubbing and hearing the tape deck scrub at the same time. That nearly blew my brain apart. I was like, hang on a minute, this is talking to this, and then I'm seeing that back, and I was like, hang on a minute, I can't deal with this. This is too cool. And that just sent me on this crazy tangent. I was like, hang on, I can do all this on the fly. This is brilliant. I don't have to record stuff and to something and then write that back. Oh, this is brilliant. And doing that on the fly completely changed the game. But I guess one thing I wanted to ask with regards to that is, you've obviously, as I said, you've been through a variety of different tech changes over the years. Do you think there is some advantages being hindered in the tech that you currently have? Or do you feel that by having newer tech, it's enabled more creativity?
You mean, sorry, what I didn't get the beginning part.
So essentially, by having, you often find that by having restricted technology, people are a lot more creative in the way that they do things.
Sure.
Whereas now, because it's like you throw it in and it just works, maybe the creative is being lost. But I mean, obviously, in your field and you're exposed to it, do you think that rings true, or do you think technology has actually advanced creativity somewhat?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think both are true, right? Because just because like the cutting edge technology exists doesn't necessarily mean that you have access to it. If you're like an indie filmmaker and you don't have a large budget, you're gonna have to make do with what you have, and that will limit you in many ways. But in other ways, it will help you be more creative. And some of the some of the coolest things, some of the coolest ideas, and some of the coolest techniques have come from indie filmmakers who just don't have the budget for all the cutting edge technology. So like there's that for sure. And working with limitations it can really tap into your creativity, and that's one of the reasons why I like using Amiga as well, because now I can take all the knowledge that I've gained in the professional world and bring it into Amiga. So I'm like, all right, when I was using the Amiga, I was like young and I didn't really understand photography that well. But now that I do understand photography, it's like, what can I make the Amiga do now? That's pretty fun. So I love. So you're right. You're like the not having every tool at your hand, and and older technology that it does help you creatively. But the flip side is it's really nice to have like the best technology, and I think it's amazing because there's so many like really cool things that are happening in the world right now that have me really excited and really inspired. Like Unreal Engine, for example, I think it's going to be one of the big futures of filmmaking. They used it in the Mandalorian, and it's they used it. There's a way that they use Unreal Engine to render backdrops in real time instead of doing it on the green screen, and that just opens up a whole world of possibilities. It allows you to put the actual footage that you're doing the composite of on the monitors, and this way, first of all, like it looks so good, and it tracks with the camera. It's rendering in real time as you move the camera, so that saves a lot of time in post. But then the other thing that's amazing about it is, like, let's say you're shooting something with reflective surfaces. That's always been a nightmare for green screen and blue screen work, because you can replace the background, no problem, but then what do you do with the reflection of the green screen in the car or in the motorcycle or in the glasses or in the helmet? It's a big problem. But now if you have the actual footage on the screen behind your subject, then you're going to get all the proper reflections in the glasses, on the chrome or whatever reflective surface you're shooting. So that's cool. And then the other thing that's amazing about it is the new technology, like these new monitors. They're so bright, they can get to like thousands of nits that you can actually use the monitors themselves as lighting instruments, which gives you like such a much more like realistic look. So like, let's say you like create a desert scene behind your subject. You can put like the sky above them with the monitors, and you can put like desert scene even off camera, but then all those colors and all those hues are being projected onto your subject, and it just makes them match and fit into that environment so much easier. It's so something like that is cutting edge technology, but it's something that's really exciting too, because I mean then that just opens up a whole world of possibilities, because like even for big productions, like flying an entire crew to Tunisia or something, to shoot in the desert, it's even for them it's hard to do. But with the new technology, that will allow you to do it, and allow you to be more creative as well, because let's just say you fly to Tunisia to shoot in the desert. You have to deal with weather. It's super super hot. You have to deal with like the old problem like they had on oh my god, my brain stops working sometimes, on Lawrence of Arabia, like where you have footsteps in the sand. Like you don't have to deal with any of that, so you can like really focus on the story and on the acting and on the camera movement without having to worry about it being like 110 degrees out, or without having to worry about like a big storm rolling in. It frees you up creatively a lot, and that's really neat. And I'm super interested as well in like facial replacement, and there's just so much stuff that you can do with the new technology. I think it's really really exciting. So I think it's really both, man. Like I feel like the new technology lets you do anything you can imagine, but then like working with limitations like helps you problem solve and come up with the new things that you never thought of before.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a fine line balance between the two, and if you get it right, you can end up with something technically advanced but hindered enough that it still unlocks the creativity. I mean, part of the reason why I asked was I certainly remember I used to work for a TV manufacturer. I won't say who, you can probably guess. And 3D TVs were all of the rage at one part. And I've always said when new technology comes out, the driving force behind that is there enough content to keep this ball going? And I kind of looked at 3D TVs and I said, yeah, great, but it costs too much. And 3D cameras were just absurd. And I said, if it's going higher quality versus 3D, I know which one I'm going to put my money on. Because for a studio who's shooting film, it's a no-brainer. It's like, well, the ROI we're going to get from doing this is not going to be as much as we're going to get there doing this. It may look cooler, but it's not going to be enough. And I certainly remember, I mean, don't get me wrong, the technology for 3D I still think was brilliant. I think certain films it works very well with, but I genuinely feel that everybody just decided to do things in 3D without truly understanding the correct way of doing it. And that's why I asked about the technology thing, because I think some people immediately grab onto new tech and then suddenly realise, I don't know what I'm doing with this, but is it cool? Is it? I don't know. Is it cool? We'll slap 3D on it and say it's cool. It's definitely cool. And then you watch it and you're like, this sucks. Like, you've clearly not understood the tech that's gone into it. But it's funny you said about the background replacement, because one thing that Nvidia are currently working on, if you don't know, is their RTX cards have got, or eventually they will when they release it. There is going to be something that's going to be great for us streamers, which is basically going to be a way of replacing the background without using some of this, fancy software and stuff. But it will do it real time, and it will all be based on AI. And apparently, from what I have heard, it is absolutely spot on. So, for instance, this background behind me would be beautifully keyed out, even though I move my hands, and you can then replace it with anything. You can have like text sort of go past my head and it will sort of interact with it and stuff like that. So that kind of stuff already sounds cool. Take that into a film studio. The sky's the limit, right?
Yeah, no, I know they're already dealing with that technology in the film business too. And I mean, at the end of the day, like, the only thing that matters is the story or whatever you're trying to present to your viewer. That's the only thing that matters. And then the technology is a tool. Like, if you make something just to demo the technology, it's not going to resonate with people. If you make a 3D movie and it's really just to showcase 3D, then it's not really going to resonate with people, because all you're doing is showcasing the technology. But like, if you use the technology and choose the right technology to tell your story, then that's when it works.
There's only so many times you can make Just Dance 3D or whatever the hell that was called. I think they did 3 of those films, and I was like, guys, end it after the first one. But here's a question for you. Why didn't we get an Another World film? Why did that not happen? Why did Another World not have a film? That's what I want.
I don't. Yeah, I mean,
that's what I want.
I don't know. I would like to be a part of that, though.
There we go. There you go. You heard it here first. It's an exclusive. So I did ask you briefly before we came online your favourite Amiga game, and that was one of the ones that you chose. Mm-hmm. So what was the reason behind that?
I mean, Another World was just so different when it came out, and being that I love movies and I love cinema, it was by far the most cinematic video game I'd ever played up until then. It just created like this awesome mood, this awesome environment, this incredible atmosphere. I just, as soon as I saw the opening, I was hooked. And then when I started playing the game, just like the sounds brought me into that world. And it was really cool because it was also a game that I could beat. Like, it wasn't too hard. Like, I liked the puzzles were challenging but simple enough. And the gameplay was simple enough. I was able to beat it as well. But for me, it was really just about like creating that environment and getting immersed in that world that I loved. And it was just different from everything else at the time. It really just worked. It was amazing. Yeah, I love that game.
I think one thing I loved about it was the fact that there was no HUD. So there was no like, you must go this way, you must interact with this. You had to learn that yourself, right? So it was like, even the start scene when you'd get, spoilers if you've not played it, but then again, you've had like, I don't know, 25 years or however long it is. When you get dumped in the water at the beginning, and I was like, oh, what happens here? And then suddenly that thing creeps up and just, goodbye. And you're like, oh. Yeah. So obviously I've got to do something. So then you like climb out and you're like, okay, cool. And then you go along a few screens, and then those little weird blob things cut your knee and you sort of smack your head on the floor and you're like, okay, don't touch those. So as you progress and keep playing it, you're constantly learning. And it was, I mean, I remember the first time I played it and I was like, this is brilliant. Like, this is awesome. And I don't think, as far as I'm aware, there is a port of it that I've not found that's playable. Every port of it, whether it be the Amiga one, the Super Nintendo one, and every other port that's come after it, all of them have been brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And it just shows when you, probably similar to videography to some degree, and having a passion for certain things, when you do things simple and you do it right, it's clearly consistent, and that comes through on the end product, I feel, anyway.
Yeah, I love the game. It's really cool. I just love, again, like I said, I love the whole environment of it. It just sucked me right in. It was something I'd never seen before. Whenever something comes out that's a completely new experience, that really turns me on. And it's so funny because I've been really lucky in my life. I've had so many really amazing life experiences, and I've just been thinking about that lately. I have become like a little bit jaded, like I haven't, it's hard to like get that experience of something new, and the most recent thing that happened to me, that's whole something new, is when I got Oculus Rift. Like, I put on the Oculus Rift, and I was just like, oh my God. And it sucked me into that virtual reality world, and I was like, this is really cool. This is a new experience. This is an experience that I haven't had yet in my life. So that was, I love it when you have something that's totally new and a new experience, and your senses are stimulated, and you're feeling these feelings that you never had before. I love that. And then this game did it. This game did that for me.
It is such a superb game. But I had a very similar experience with VR where I kind of was interested in it. I'd played around with some of the other tech that had been around at the time, and I remember we went to a superstore. Well, I say a superstore. It's a huge, famous store in London called Harrods. And as I was walking around, they had a stand for the Oculus Rift at the time. And I was like, kind of interested in VR. And the lady was like, oh, we'll have a go if you want. I was like, all right. And my brother was all like panicky. He was like, you sure you're going to be all right? You're not going to have like some red panic attack? I was like, no, I'll be fine. Don't worry. And I remember putting on the headset and grabbing both controllers and seeing my hands for the first time in VR. And my brain nearly exploded. I was like, this may be the... And then like I went like that, and I could grip and point and thumbs up. And I was like, yeah, I'll take one. Yeah, thanks. She was like, don't you want to play any games? I was like, oh yeah, it's got games. Yeah, sorry, I'll be back in a minute. And then carried on playing it. She was like, yeah, just ring it up. Don't worry, I'll get it in a moment. But yeah, that experience... And I mean, I'm a massive advocate of VR. And I absolutely love it. There are aspects of it that, even till this day, absolutely blow my mind. And talking about storytelling and videography, Half-Life Alyx has done the perfect interactive movie experience that's a game that I have ever played, period. And there, I said that on record. It is outstanding if you've not played it. There are elements of it that there are elements of it that could do a bit of tweaking, like some of the sound elements and stuff like that, but as an interactive experience that you go through and play through, it is just absolutely outstanding. Right, so we're coming up to the hour, which I know you have a hard stop at 1:15, so I'm going to try and...
I can go, yeah, a 1:15 is fine, no problem. I'm keeping an eye on the time, so don't worry about
no problems. So I do have 3 questions that have popped in, so hopefully we can get through these. Cool. So the first question comes from Amiga 1200 Gamer. Welcome. He asks, or she, if Amiga had never existed, what would be your platform of choice and why? Very good question.
Holy cow. That's a really good question and a really hard one. Yeah, Amiga 1200 Gamer is awesome. They show up in my streams all the time. I'm definitely very lucky. So many cool people show up for my streams. If Amiga hadn't existed, what would be? Now I guess I'd have to wonder, like, would it be like a fictional something else, or just like with what existed? I guess let's just go with what exists. I guess if Amiga didn't exist, I'd probably be in the PC. Because after Amiga, I went PC anyway, because when the CD-ROM drives came out, and when Syndicate and Full Throttle came out, like I did play Syndicate on my Amiga and I love it. But then like Full Throttle came out and Descent, and now that's what started to pull me over to PC a little bit more. Like I still love my Amiga, and I still love my Amiga more than the PC. But I'm like, oh man, Full Throttle's a cool game. I guess I would be on PC. If it didn't come out, and then I would have eventually went to Mac in year 2000, 2001 when Final Cut Pro came out. That was kind of like that because that is what happened. I after Amiga, I went to PC. And I was using Adobe Premiere, and it was brutal. It was terrible. And then when Final Cut Pro came out, I switched over to Mac, and it was just awesome. It was like a godsend. And now, unfortunately, Final Cut Pro 10 happened, and I kind of, I'm a little bit. I don't use Macs. I still have my Mac laptop. It's a wonderful computer, but I've kind of transitioned more to PC now. I love like building my own computer, and I love swapping graphics cards. So now I'm back to Adobe Premiere on a PC. So that's come full circle. Fortunately, it's better now. Still buggy, but it's at least it's usable. Back then, it was just like it was unusable. Yeah.
I remember using Premiere in its early stages, and I wanted to put my fist through a wall. So I definitely, I remember those dark days. So there we have it. We have a PC and a Mac. There's your answer. So next question.
I probably would have been PC back then, because Mac was black and white, and desktop publishing was cool. But I used to use PageMaker on the PC as well, so I would have went PC. Yeah.
Blimey, that brought back some memories. Gosh, I haven't heard that for a long time.
I used to use PageStream on the Amiga, and because I used to do the newsletter for Westchester Amiga User Group, so I would use PageStream mostly. But then I also knew PageMaker on the PC. I forgot why I also knew PageMaker, but I used PageMaker for some other things. I don't remember. Oh, because I think when I went to my dad's office, they didn't have an Amiga in it, so I used PageMaker. Right. I think that's why. I don't remember. I used PageMaker and PageStream a lot.
Cool. So question number 2 has come from Maya82. Welcome as well. They have asked. An interesting question. This will probably make you laugh. How does it feel to be interviewed versus being the interviewer, like on your own stream, amigabill?
That's a really good question too. Wow, I'm loving the questions. Yeah, Maya's awesome. She's in the VIP club. How does it feel? So when it's again, this is another. I mentioned before how like making YouTube videos and streaming. It's helped me with my professional career as well. And this is one of the areas where this really, hits home, because I would love to make my own films and my own documentaries. And, I've witnessed some of the best documentary directors conducting interviews, but I never actually did it myself. And you don't really, you can learn a lot by watching, but you really learn the most by actually conducting the interviews.
Agreed.
So when I have someone on my stream and I interview them, it's definitely, I treat it as practice. I treat it as practice for the films that I want to make. And I learn from every time I interview someone, I learn from it. And I listen to a lot of people who I really like, a lot of interviewers who I really like, and I try and learn from them. And so that's cool. But I try, like you do, I try and prepare before the interviews as much as possible. I try and learn as much as possible about the guest that I can. Sometimes I can't, just because the person who I have on, I really don't know much about, and there's not much information about them out there. But I always try and, learn as much as possible about the guest, and then I try and ask questions that I think the audience will like. And then when I'm being interviewed by people, it's easier for me because I can just kind of chill out and relax. I don't have to worry about preparing all the questions. But it's cool because I like the difference when I'm doing the interviews. I like to learn about people, and I like to practice my interview technique. But then when I'm being interviewed, I like it when someone asks me a question that I never thought of before. So I learn from that standpoint. Like it can open my eyes and show me a perspective on the way people see me, or a perspective on a subject that I'd never thought of before. So it's cool. Like I kind of learn, I learn about other people. When I interview someone, I learn about them. And then when I get interviewed, I learn about myself. I guess that's the big difference.
That's a very good answer. I like that. Now the third question is, come from a friend of my channel, which is Rocksalt9000. It's an interesting one. I don't even know if you're going to be able to answer this, but I will answer it anyway. Not an entirely serious question, but has Bill played Gladiator 1984? He mentioned horses earlier. Now, just for context, if you've not played Gladiator 1984, it is an SNK arcade game, and it is awful. It is one of the most insane games I've ever played. For context, isometric game, you are on a horse, you are running at an angle, you are then getting chased down by other horses that are trying to knock you off the track, into which at the same time there are pigs, there are people that look like the characters from Speedball 2, and people chucking barrels at you. After you eventually complete level 1, you then end up in a chariot, which then randomly fires cannonballs, even though it doesn't actually have a cannonball, but it has a horse. It is insane. If you've not played it, play it.
I have not played it, but it sounds amazing. It sounds like the kind of game I love. So thank you. I gotta write down. What's it called?
Gladiator 1984, and it has one of the and it is one of the most irritating, bloody soundtracks I have ever heard in my life. It will get stuck in your head, and you will go and have to wash your ears out with bleach. Believe me.
So that's an arcade game.
It is, and I still can't believe it's made by SNK. I did tweet at them saying, "How the hell did you make this monstrosity?" They didn't tweet back.
Sounds like something we should put in the Arcade Dream documentary.
Yes, indeed. Funny enough, we have timed this absolutely perfectly because the credits of Another World have just finished. So we couldn't have timed that any better, even if we tried. So there we have it. It has been. I can't believe how quickly that has flown by, Bill. I know you've got a hard stop, so I am going to let you go back to your world and your day and enjoy it. But thank you so much. It has been a pleasure. We could probably go for another 3 hours, but even having this short time has been an absolute pleasure for me. I have learned so much, and as I said, for anybody who hasn't checked out Bill, who's in chat, !podcast. Please make sure you go and follow him on Twitter, on Twitch, learn a little bit more about Bill. Bill is awesome. He has my seal of approval 100%, and I'm sure that everyone in chat totally agrees. Thank you so much, Bill. Honestly, you've been an absolute pleasure, and one of my favourite guests. There you go, I've said it.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, and to everyone in chat who's actually turned up and submitted questions, thank you so much. It really does make a huge difference, especially the follows and stuff. I know I can't answer all of them because I'm busy interviewing this great man next to me, but honestly it does make a massive difference to the podcast, so thank you so much. Right, stay on the line, Bill. We'll talk briefly offline, but from me, Mean Machine Dean, I'm going to sign out. Have a great afternoon, evening or morning wherever you are, and I will speak to you later. Mean Machine Dean, signing out. Take it easy.
Thank you. Thanks for watching. Thanks for having me on, Dean.
No problems. Take care, Bill.